recently I began thinking on to pretty much give a review on the iPad and my thoughts on how it's worked out for me. Some things I will be going over will be things such as the pros and cons of using the iPad for school, work, and productivity, how I use it on a daily basis, what issues or limitations the iPad possesses, and my conclusion on my future use of it and if I'd recommend it to others. So, I use my iPad for things such as school, content creation, of course media consumption, and managing my business as well. And I've been doing this for about, I think now over a year, so I'd like to think I have a pretty good idea on how the iPad works and how to use it. Although I do use my iPad for multiple things, it's not my only productivity machine. Others, like my actual PC. Now, I have this new Razer Blade Stealth, but this video had to be, the script had to be edited a bit because I did sell my MacBook Pro. It was a 2013. So, yeah. So I have the iPad, my laptop, my phone, and my actual PC. And I like to think of my iPad as a sort of extension of my workstation at home to extend the power and versatility of my PC on the go. When I'm at home, I'm more likely to use my other devices for getting things done specifically because of their, honestly, bigger screens, software versatility, which we'll get to later. I mean, I can't even have a good experience with the iPad's display I can't have a good experience using the iPad to connect to an external monitor. So, the idea of using it for more screen space is just out of the window. But on the go, I usually never take my laptop from home, which might change. Before, I never took my MacBook from home. But I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is using my Windows laptop, the Razer, for coding on the go. Because on the iPad, that's not going to happen. But my handle can handle most of the things I need to do on the go. Now, before this could be because my iPad Pro is much stronger than the MacBook, but still the iPad is powerful. Now, with all that out the way, firstly, I'm going to jump into the overall cons of using the iPad as a primary productivity device. So, limitations of the iPad are, for the most part, software related, but that doesn't mean it isn't limited by its hardware, but we'll get to that later. I personally don't need some sort of supercomputer to handle any of the work, as most of my work consists of very light video editing with, for the most part, 1080p video, exporting that, uploading it, and small productivity things such as, reading my emails, handling daily tasks such as media consumption, checking emails, and writing scripts or handling my business, finances, things like that. So, for a more specific list of software issues I have, they include very lackluster file management system. I mean, for anyone who has an iPad, the Files app it's bare bones. I'll put it like that. It is very bare bones. Lack of support for general software, as any and all applications must come from the App Store only. That's a huge limitation. No Final Cut Pro, no Audacity, no any kind of applications that need to be downloaded from the internet only. That's it. You're done. You're screwed. But that doesn't mean that the App Store doesn't have good apps at all, and we'll get to that later because you'll see when we get to the pros. Reliability in terms of working with school for assignments, such as trying to use it for testing, to any students who have it, the iPad, and trying to use it primary. I haven't forced myself to use the iPad for taking a test, like whenever you need the lockdown browsers, things like that, but you are at a huge disadvantage and a limitation for using the iPad for school. Now, that doesn't mean it's completely bad for school, but for specific things, testing, and sometimes completing assignments, you are limited by the software, again. iPad OS is a mobile software, not a computer software at the end of the day. The iPad really tries to make you think otherwise. It even looks almost like macOS. I mean, look at it. But it is still a mobile software. And if you're serious about school, or if you're in a very specific major like computer science, I cannot wholeheartedly recommend the iPad as your main school life device. I mean, everything is done in the App Store, so. Now, that doesn't mean, like I said, the iPad I think is a good companion device for school. I used to love taking notes with it during classes. I use GoodNotes personally, but it's still good for school, but not as your only device. Now, for the hardware limitations, there's only one port, and it's also USB-C. And it does work great, but I still feel like most of the world has yet to move primarily to USB-C, but that's just my personal opinion. And honestly, now that I'm reading it, maybe it's not completely there, but of course, a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse will be required if you plan on using it like a laptop, or Apple's lovely but expensive Magic Keyboard. Accessories will be required, which may be some of the fun for some, but I know that if I really plan on getting work done, I will need to bring my USB hub with me. Not to mention, if you don't have Apple's admittedly mostly great Magic Keyboard, you will need a keyboard, and of course, a mouse at the bare minimum. And if I'm being honest, I do think a lot of computer users in general have gotten used to carrying dongles, so this point is somewhat redundant. The size of the iPad. This point will be brought up for the pros of the iPad, but I do own the 11-inch iPad Pro 2020, and while I'm happy with the size, as for the most part, I prefer portability over size and ease of use. It does sometimes hinder my productivity or my likelihood of using it for serious work when I'm at home due to the lack of screen real estate. Now, after writing the script and visiting a few stores and seeing the iPad 13-inch, it is massive, but I feel like it's in a weird shape for stuff. I don't know how to explain it. It's a huge screen. I don't personally own a 13-inch. I've never, daily drove it or anything, so I can't say if it's any better. And storage can be an issue depending on how much money you want to shell out for the iPad. I personally have the 256 gigabyte variant, but now I kind of wish I would have gotten the 512 gigabyte option instead. But I still have yet to max out the storage of the iPad, and due to all of my video editing mostly being in 1080p, my storage should last a little longer. But the thought that unless I'm, moving them around between drives or the cloud, then my iPad can easily fill up. Also, this could be a redundant point depending on your preference if you carry, or if you always carry around an external USB hub. USB external drive, which I do myself. Okay, then, now that we got that over with, that did sound like a lot of negativity, but I wanted to get it out the way first so we can get to the pros, finally. So, for the pros of the iPad Pro, for the 11-inch variant, of which I have only owned, and I probably prefer, the portability and lightweightness makes it such a delight to hold and use, especially for media consumption and just carrying it around. It can be very, very light, but also very powerful. I'm holding my iPad, reading my script right now, like a piece of paper. I absolutely love it. The battery life is amazing, top notch. I can usually get 8 to 12 hours or even more of battery depending on how I'm using it. And the comparison to that versus, my now sold MacBook Pro, which would get around 6 or 7 hours before needing a charge, that really discourages me from taking my MacBook, and I would rather take my iPad Pro with me instead. And especially how heavy that MacBook was, it did kind of suck to carry. And just a laptop in general being a little bigger and sometimes a little heavier. Also, a great point I just thought of, a pro to using the iPad instead of bringing my laptop is that if it gets low on battery, you have to plug it into a wall. And this point might be redundant because I wrote this originally for the MacBook Pro 2013, which is MagSafe. I'm not sure if I can use my portable 15,000 milliamp hour portable battery to charge my laptop, but I know for a fact I can use it to charge my iPad, and I can easily, for constant use, my iPad will last days. I sometimes don't even charge it every day. Sometimes I charge it every 2, even 3 days. I've never had an issue with power limitations of the iPad. I've no complaints, no stutters or lag or freezes. It's always been a smooth ride in terms of actual software usage and reliability. I mean, this thing just tanks. This thing is powerful. Nothing I've done even pushes it. For fun and productivity, having the Magic Keyboard, Apple Pencil, AirPods, and if I'm really in the mood, I'll bring the Magic Mouse. It's such a delight being in the Apple ecosystem with all the accessories, and I can keep myself occupied with the iPad and all that all day, easily. I mean, there's so much you can do on it. Now, bringing back that con point, app selection for productivity and education is honestly pretty good, and this may sound hypocritical considering what I just said about the software limitations with the App Store, but some apps such as Notion, Fantastical, Procreate, LumaFusion are amazing. Oh, and GoodNotes, of course. And there's plenty more that I've seen that I haven't just explored, but these really do blur the line between laptop and tablet use. Now, I like to say I'm not some crazy Apple fanboy, but I am admittedly very in bed with Apple's ecosystem, and the iPad works beautifully with it. Things like Fantastical and Notion, but you can kind of count Notion because it works pretty much across all devices that can get on the internet. iCloud Drive, calls and texts from the iPad work for the most part without a hitch. There's just always something cool about when you're being productive on your iPad. So, how do I use the iPad? Well, I usually, of course, start my day. I pack my bag, which, if we're only talking about things in relation to my iPad, I pack the iPad attached to the Magic Keyboard. And in the carrying case, I put my 15,000 milliamp hour portable power bank, Apple Pencil, my external SSD, a mouse, my AirPod Pros, and yeah, I'm good with that. When I usually get to work, the iPad just kind of sits there, and so I get free time to use it anyway. But when I do have free time, I usually immediately, check my emails for any updates onto Notion, which I could make a whole other video on to go through my different pages and see what I need to do for the day, starting with business and onto content creation. In Notion, I've at least tried to make an attempt at making some sort of creation hub for the full video creation process. I mean, I'm using it right now for the script that I'm reading off of. I try and at least brainstorm a bit for maybe a new video idea, or maybe even adding additional notes for a video, working on a script, or getting business ideas out, or managing my finances. Next up, if everything is ready, I'll begin using LumaFusion to begin the editing process for a video for at least, 30 minutes or so. And it's nice because I can do the light editing on my iPad on the go. And then once I get home, move that file over to my computer and really get to editing and finishing touches and any big things that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing on just my iPad, in which I use Resolve. And then usually I have to close up shop and get ready to get back to work, so the next time I open it will likely be for media consumption when I get home. So when I get home, I usually leave training shortly after I arrive home, so it isn't until I get back home that I'll use the iPad. That was like 10 homes in a sentence. After some gaming or eating or whatever I'm doing, I'll likely grab my iPad and, well, of course, consume some media. Now, for the most part, I use the Magic Keyboard as a $300 stand for the iPad. For example, when I'm laying down, I'll have it sitting on my chest and just look up. Extra lazy, but whatever. But I can't say holding the iPad with my hand has never been an issue. And I'm sure there's plenty of stand choices. Like, I'm holding the iPad with one hand right now, reading the script, like a piece of paper. So, it's pretty comfy for the most part. So, with all that out of the way, let's get to our final verdict. Is the iPad good for content creation, productivity, and education? Now, this isn't just an end-all be-all yes or no. I personally think the answer lies on how serious you are on what you're doing. If you're planning on creating amazing videos for whatever content creation you're doing, maybe an actual computer will do the job better. Or if you have unlimited money, iPad for on-the-go, computer when you're at home for the real editing and finishing touches. And again, if you're really serious about it, I think a lot of people probably would just prefer a computer for that software versatility versus only using the App Store. Productivity, I would give that a solid yes for the most part, especially with the ease of portability in the App Store. Productivity's never been easier. There's plenty of apps for staying productive on your iPad. That, I would say 100% yes. iPad can increase your productivity. It's great for it. I love it. No complaints for that. What about for education, though? Well, if I'm being honest, I can't wholeheartedly recommend the iPad for school completely. While I do love using it for notes, communication with classmates, maybe even typing up small things, but outside of that, I'd feel much comfortable being on an actual computer software. Whether that be Windows or Mac, depends on what you're specifically doing for the job. I mean, there's really sometimes some moods you have to jump through to fully use it for school. And I'm not even sure it'd be truly possible to only use an iPad for a semester of college. If anyone has experience with that, please let me know in the comments. Like, if you're gonna force yourself to use an iPad only for school, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because you have to really try to make it work. I mean, I tried doing some coding on this thing. It's difficult. I mean, I would almost say it's not worth it. I would rather remote in to my at-home PC to do that. But at that point, wouldn't it just be better to bring my laptop? So, for the final verdict, I would say if you're... How do I word it? The iPad is a great machine. Powerful, light. But there are some cons. Expensive accessories sometimes. Limited software. I mean, there's plenty of caveats to that, but that's the big things with it. So, for school, I would say it's not worth using only an iPad. It's great for on the go. I loved using it for class notes, with GoodNotes with my Apple Pencil. Beautifully, worked great, synced my GoodNotes across my devices. No complaints. But it is limited, and like I said, I think you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're going to force yourself to only use it for school. Now, for the productivity side of it, I think it's great. I think it's a great machine for staying productive. I mean, for being productive, you want things to be quick. You want your device to be light, and you just want it to look nice. And the iPad does all of that. And even like I said, I have the iPad Pro, the iPad Air now might even be a better option for most people for that cheaper cost. So, yeah, that'll wrap up the video. I hope you found it somewhat informative or interesting. I've always wanted to try and get something out, like a real review of it. But don't get me wrong, I love my iPad, love its depth, use it all the time. But I'll try and keep this ending short. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in a stream or in the comments, or as a subscriber, or anywhere. Anyways, I'll see you guys later.